The
This is
rifle
it.
slipped from Private
Stay
Marcus
sharp
Reed's
out there.
sweaty hands for the third time that morning, clattering to the ground as the drill sergeant's face turned a dangerous shade of crimson. In 22 years of service, I have never seen such a pathetic excuse for a soldier, the sergeant bellowed, veins bulging. The other recruits stifled laughter as Marcus fumbled to recover his weapon, accidentally discharging it into the dirt. Reed, Drill Sergeant Harmon's voice cut through the air like a blade. What in God's name do you think you're doing? You just killed an imaginary squirrel. Congratulations on your first confirmed kill. Too bad it was friendly fire. The platoon erupted in laughter, no longer trying to hide their amusement. Marcus felt his face burning as he struggled to secure the rifle properly. His hands wouldn't stop trembling, and the more they shook, the more he panicked, creating a vicious cycle of incompetence. "I'm sorry, Drill Sergeant," Marcus mumbled, eyes fixed on his boots. Sorry. Harmon circled him like a shark. Sorry doesn't bring back dead soldiers, Reed. Sorry doesn't win wars. Sorry is what your mother should be for raising such a disappointment. Marcus flinched at the mention of his mother. 6 months dead from cancer, her final wish had been to see him make something of himself. The military had seemed like the answer: structure, purpose, a chance to belong somewhere. Now, 2 weeks into basic training, it was clear he'd made a catastrophic mistake. "The rest of you, continue with your drills," Harmon barked before lowering his voice to address Marcus. "As for you, Butterfingers, drop and give me 50. Then report to the armory for remedial weapons training. I refuse to have a liability like you in my platoon." As Marcus struggled through push-ups, his arms quivering pathetically by number 15, he caught sight of Private Jenkins watching him with a mixture of pity and contempt. Jenkins, the platoon's star recruit, former high school quarterback, expert marksman, and natural leader, represented everything Marcus wasn't. "Need some help there, Reed," Jenkins called out, his tone dripping with mock concern. "Maybe the daycare center down the road is recruiting. I hear they need someone to demonstrate what not to do." More laughter. Marcus gritted his teeth and pushed through another wobbly push-up. 17, 18. His arms gave out on 19, and he collapsed face first into the mud. "Pathetic," Harmon spat. "Finish your 50 and then run to the armory. Running, Reed, not whatever sad excuse for movement you normally do." That afternoon, during the 2-mile qualification run, he collapsed halfway through, vomiting spectacularly while the platoon jogged past. Several recruits made exaggerated retching sounds as they passed him. Private Diaz, a wiry recruit from Chicago, deliberately splashed through a puddle next to Marcus, spraying muddy water across his already soiled uniform. "Move it, Reed," Staff Sergeant Collins shouted from behind. "My grandmother could outrun you, and she's been dead for 12 years. Marcus staggered to his feet, wiping bile from his chin. His lungs burned, and his legs felt like they were filled with concrete. He'd never been athletic. Growing up, he'd spent most of his time helping in his mother's bookstore or tinkering with computers in his bedroom. The closest he'd come to physical training was carrying boxes of hardcovers up 3 flights of stairs when new shipments arrived. He forced himself forward, one agonizing step after another. By the time he crossed the finish line, the rest of the platoon had already completed their cool-down exercises and were heading to the mess hall. His time was nearly double the minimum requirement. "Reed," Staff Sergeant Collins said, shaking his head as he recorded the abysmal time. "At this rate, you'll finish basic training sometime next decade." At the shooting range that afternoon, his targets came back pristine, not a single bullet hole in sight. The range master, a weathered veteran named Captain Winters, examined Marcus's target with bewilderment. "Son, did you even fire your weapon?" he asked, genuinely confused. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, his voice barely audible. 6 times, sir." Captain Winters looked at the untouched target, then back at Marcus. "That's statistically improbable. Even firing randomly, you should have hit something." "Maybe he was aiming for the clouds," Jenkins suggested, triggering another round of laughter from nearby recruits. Captain Winters silenced them with a look. Everyone misses sometimes, Reed, but missing completely, that takes a special kind of talent. There was no mockery in his voice, just genuine puzzlement. He handed the target back to Marcus. Keep it as a souvenir. You might want to remember this day when things turn around. If they turn around, Marcus muttered under his breath. When? Captain Winters corrected quietly before moving on to the next recruit. During evening chow, Marcus sat alone at the end of a table, pushing mystery meat around his tray. His stomach was still unsettled from the run, and the constant ache of humiliation had killed his appetite. He could hear snippets of conversation from the other recruits, jokes at his expense, bets on how long before he washed out, speculation about what possible reason the recruitment office had for accepting him. Hey, Butterfingers, Jenkins called from across the mess hall. Heard Sergeant Harmon is making you scrub the latrines tonight. Try not to drop the toilet brush, yeah. Marcus kept his eyes down, refusing to engage. His father's voice echoed in his head. Reeds don't quit, we endure. His father had abandoned that philosophy, and his family, when Marcus was 12, disappearing with his secretary and half the family's savings. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. After dinner, he reported to Drill Sergeant Harmon as ordered. The sergeant was waiting with a toothbrush and a bucket. The latrines need cleaning, Reed. Every inch. I want those toilets clean enough to eat from. Yes, Drill Sergeant, Marcus replied mechanically. And Reed, this isn't punishment. This is me trying to find something, anything, you might actually be good at, because so far, soldiering ain't it. That night, as he scrubbed toilets with a toothbrush, his punishment for being the only recruit in camp history to score 0 on the preliminary marksmanship assessment, Marcus fought back tears of frustration. His knees ached against the hard tile floor, and the chemical smell of disinfectant burned his nostrils. The bathroom was empty save for him and his thoughts, which were darker by the minute. You don't belong here, he whispered to himself, scrubbing furiously at a particularly stubborn stain. Everyone knows it, you're just too stubborn to admit it. As he moved to the last stall, he noticed something wedged behind a pipe. A book, its cover water-stained but still legible. The Invisible Art of Long-Distance Elimination. Curious, he pulled it free. It was clearly old, the pages yellowed and dog-eared. Opening to a random page, he found detailed diagrams of breathing techniques, wind calculation methods, and body positioning for long-range shooting. Marcus glanced toward the door, then quickly slipped the book into his jacket. Contraband, certainly, but at this point, what did he have to lose? He finished cleaning the latrines in record time, his mind already racing with the possibilities the book presented. Back in the barracks, while the other recruits played cards or wrote letters home, Marcus lay on his bunk pretending to sleep. In reality, he was memorizing the first chapter of the book, hidden beneath his thin blanket with a small flashlight. The author, a former military sniper with multiple confirmed kills, described marksmanship not as a physical skill, but as a mental discipline. The body follows where the mind leads, one passage read. A trembling hand can become steady when guided by an unwavering mind. For the first time since arriving at basic training, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. If shooting was truly mental rather than physical, perhaps he had a chance. His body might be weak, his coordination laughable, but his mind, that had always been his strength. At 200 hours, when the barracks were silent except for the chorus of snores, Marcus slipped out of bed and into the communal bathroom. Standing before the mirror, he assumed the shooting stance described in the book. His reflection looked ridiculous, a skinny, pale recruit with bags under his eyes, pretending to hold a rifle. Breathe from your diaphragm, he whispered to himself, following the book's instructions. Slow your heart rate, become aware of every muscle. He practiced dry-firing techniques, imagining the weight of the rifle, the pressure of the trigger. According to the book, mental rehearsal could be almost as effective as physical practice. For 2 hours, he stood there, going through the motions again and again until his arms ached and his legs trembled. When he finally returned to his bunk, exhaustion pulled him into a dreamless sleep. For the first time since arriving at camp, he slept without anxiety gnawing at his gut. The next morning, during physical training, Marcus still struggled. His push-ups were still pathetic, his sit-ups barely meeting minimum standards. During the run, he finished last again, though this time without vomiting, a small victory he celebrated silently. At the shooting range, however, something had changed. As he took position, Marcus recalled the book's teachings. He slowed his breathing, visualized the bullet's path, and gently squeezed the trigger as if it were an extension of his own finger. His first shot missed the target completely. "Some things never change," Jenkins remarked loudly. Marcus ignored him, adjusting his stance slightly. His second shot clipped the outer edge of the target, not impressive by any standard, but a hit nonetheless. Captain Winters, observing from behind, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. By his sixth shot, Marcus had managed to place 3 bullets on the target, all in the outer rings, but definitively on the paper. It was still the worst performance in the platoon, but compared to yesterday's complete failure, it represented significant improvement. Well, Drill Sergeant Harmon said, examining the target. "Looks like toilet duty improved your aim, Reed. Maybe we should have you clean the latrines before every shooting exercise." The other recruits laughed, but there was less cruelty in it this time. Even Jenkins seemed more surprised than mocking. That night, Marcus returned to the bathroom for another session of secret practice. This time, he was more methodical, working through the book's exercises systematically. The author emphasized the importance of mental clarity, of eliminating distractions and focusing solely on the target. "The greatest enemy of accuracy is not wind or distance," one passage read, but the shooter's own doubt. As weeks passed, Marcus established a routine. During the day, he endured the regular training, still struggling but gradually improving. His physical fitness remained below average, but he was no longer failing spectacularly. At night, he studied the book and practiced in secret, applying its teachings whenever possible. His marksmanship improved incrementally, nothing dramatic enough to draw attention, but enough that he was no longer the platoon joke. By the end of the first month, he was consistently hitting the target, though rarely the center. Captain Winters began to take notice, occasionally offering small corrections to Marcus's form or brief words of encouragement. Unlike Drill Sergeant Harmon, who motivated through fear and humiliation, Captain Winters had a quieter approach, one that resonated with Marcus's introspective nature. "You're thinking too much," Captain Winters told him one day after observing a particularly tense shooting session. "Overthinking creates tension. Tension ruins aim." "But the book," Marcus began, then caught himself. Captain Winters's eyes narrowed. "What book would that be, Private?" Marcus froze, realizing his mistake. "Just something my mother used to say, sir, about concentration." The captain studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman. Remember her words, but also remember this. A good shot comes from balance, between thinking and feeling, between control and release." As Marcus walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that Captain Winters knew exactly what book he'd been referring to. The thought was both terrifying and strangely comforting. "Breathe from your diaphragm, not your chest," whispered Captain Winters, the reclusive range master who'd caught Marcus practicing alone at dawn. Instead of reporting him, the captain recognized something in the struggling recruit's determination. "Your problem isn't your aim, it's your mind." The morning had begun like any other for Marcus, rising an hour before reveille to practice in solitude. He'd found an isolated spot behind the maintenance shed where he could run through the techniques from his contraband manual without an audience. But today, as he settled into position with a broomstick standing in for a rifle, a shadow fell across him. "Interesting technique, Private Reed." Marcus scrambled to his feet, nearly tripping in his haste. "Captain Winters, I was just practicing," the captain finished for him, his weathered face unreadable. "At 4:30 with a broomstick." He extended his hand. "Let me see the book." Marcus's heart sank. 3 months into basic training, and he'd finally found something that gave him purpose. Now it would be confiscated, and he'd likely face disciplinary action. Reluctantly, he pulled The Invisible Art of Long-Distance Elimination from inside his jacket and handed it over. Captain Winters examined the book, his expression softening as he flipped through the pages. "Sergeant William Hawkins," he murmured, running a finger over the author's name. "I knew him, brilliant marksman, terrible card player." He looked up at Marcus. "Where did you find this?" "Behind a pipe in the latrine, sir, when I was being punished for being the worst shot in camp history." A hint of a smile crossed the captain's face. "Ironic." He handed the book back to Marcus, who stared at it in confusion. "You're not confiscating it, sir." "Should I?" Captain Winters raised an eyebrow. "Is there something in Army regulations against reading, Private?" "No, sir, but I thought." "That's your first problem right there," Winters interrupted. "Too much thinking. Your form is technically correct, but you're overthinking every movement. Marksmanship isn't just mechanics, it's intuition, feel, connection." He gestured to the broomstick. "Show me your stance again." Hesitantly, Marcus resumed his position, holding the broomstick as if it were a rifle. "Your shoulders are too tense," Winters observed, tapping Marcus's right shoulder. "And you're holding your breath instead of controlling it. That book teaches good fundamentals, but it can't teach you how to get out of your own way." For the next hour, Captain Winters worked with Marcus, correcting subtle flaws in his technique that weren't addressed in the book. As the eastern sky began to lighten, the captain checked his watch. "Same time tomorrow," he said, turning to leave. "And read, bring that book. There are some annotations I'd like to add." Thus began a strange mentorship. For weeks, they trained in secret, Marcus learning to control his racing heartbeat, to feel the wind rather than calculate it, to become invisible even while standing in plain sight. Captain Winters, it turned out, had been a sniper himself before an injury sidelined him to training duties. "Most recruits want to be heroes," Winters told him during one dawn session. "They want glory, medals, recognition. A sniper needs none of that. A sniper needs patience, invisibility, and the ability to make peace with solitude." "Is that why you're helping me, sir?" Marcus asked. "You think I could be a sniper?" Winters studied him thoughtfully. "I'm helping you because you remind me of myself at your age, awkward, overthinking, more comfortable with books than people." He adjusted Marcus's elbow slightly. "And yes, I think you have the potential. You have something most recruits lack." "What's that, sir?" "Humility. You've been humiliated so thoroughly that your ego is no longer in the way." Winters smiled grimly. "It's a painful way to learn, but effective." During regular training hours, Marcus maintained his facade of mediocrity, improving just enough to avoid negative attention, but not enough to draw curiosity. His physical fitness scores inched upward as the secret morning sessions built his strength and endurance. His marksmanship remained below average, deliberately so, as Captain Winters had advised him to conceal his progress. "The element of surprise is a tactical advantage," Winters explained. "Let them underestimate you until the moment it matters." 3 months into their clandestine training, the opportunity to test his skills arrived unexpectedly. The platoon was scheduled for a night exercise, a simulated combat scenario in challenging conditions. As luck would have it, a thunderstorm rolled in just as the exercise began, creating near-zero visibility conditions. "This exercise is proceeding as planned," Drill Sergeant Harmon shouted over the downpour. "Combat doesn't stop for bad weather, and neither do we." The objective was straightforward. Advance to 5 different firing positions and engage targets at increasing distances, from 100 to 500 yards, in the driving rain and darkness. Even the platoon's best shooters were struggling. Jenkins, normally cocky and precise, cursed as his shots went wide. When Marcus's turn came, he stepped up to the first position, feeling strangely calm despite the rain pelting his face and the thunder rumbling overhead. He recalled Captain Winters's teachings. "Rain changes the bullet's trajectory, but predictably. Wind is your real enemy." He took a deep breath, feeling the subtle air currents against his wet skin. The target was barely visible, a human-shaped silhouette 100 yards away. Marcus squeezed the trigger 5 times in rapid succession, then moved to the next position without waiting for results. At 200 yards, the target was a ghostly shadow in the darkness. Again, 5 shots, delivered with the same quiet confidence. At 300 yards, even the best recruits had missed completely. Marcus could barely see the target, but he didn't need to. He had memorized its position, calculated the wind's effect, and adjusted for the rain's impact on the bullet's path. 5 more shots, then on to 400 yards, and finally 500, where the target was entirely invisible to the naked eye. Marcus fired his last 5 rounds and lowered his rifle, oddly at peace despite the storm raging around him. When the exercise concluded and the targets were retrieved for scoring, Drill Sergeant Harmon's expression shifted from irritation to disbelief. Jenkins had managed to hit 3 targets out of 5, the best performance until they reached Marcus's results. "Reed," Harmon said slowly, examining the targets. "You hit all 5, center mass." He looked up, rain streaming down his face. "How the hell did you manage that in these conditions?" Before Marcus could respond, Jenkins snatched the targets from Harmon's hands. "This has to be a mistake. Butterfingers couldn't hit the broad side of a barn in perfect conditions." "The targets don't lie, Jenkins," Harmon replied, taking them back. "Reed hit all 5 with mechanical precision, 25 shots, 25 hits." He turned to Marcus, eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Explain yourself, Private." Marcus swallowed hard. "Just got lucky, Drill Sergeant." "Bullshit," Jenkins spat. "He must have cheated somehow." "In a thunderstorm, in the dark," Harmon shook his head. "That would be one hell of a cheat." He studied Marcus's mud-streaked face, then at the targets again. "Beginner's luck," he growled, but his eyes revealed something else, uncertainty, and perhaps a glimmer of respect. That evening, Marcus found a note under his pillow with coordinates to an abandoned quarry and instructions to come alone. The handwriting was unmistakably Captain Winters's. After lights out, Marcus slipped away from the barracks, heart pounding with equal parts excitement and trepidation. The quarry was a 30-minute hike from camp, a massive excavation long abandoned and partially reclaimed by nature. As Marcus approached, he saw a small campfire and 5 figures gathered around it. Captain Winters stood when he spotted Marcus, gesturing him forward. "Gentlemen, this is Private Reed," Winters announced to the group. "The recruit I told you about." The 4 other men studied Marcus with professional scrutiny. They were older, hardened by experience, with the quiet confidence of elite operators. "This is the kid," one of them asked, skepticism evident in his voice. "He looks like he'd blow away in a stiff breeze." "So did I at his age, Jackson," another man replied. "Size isn't everything." Captain Winters introduced the men, all veteran snipers from different military branches, gathered for what he called an unofficial evaluation. "Tonight's performance wasn't a fluke," Winters told them. "Reed has been training in secret for months. I believe he has the potential to be exceptional." "We'll be the judge of that," said the oldest of the group, a grizzled man introduced only as Hawk. He nodded toward a case at his feet. "Let's see what you can do with a real precision instrument, not that standard-issue pea-shooter they give recruits." The case contained a custom rifle that Marcus immediately recognized from his book, a specialized sniper weapon with a scope that cost more than most cars. Hawk handed it to him with the reverence of a priest passing a sacred relic. "This was my competition rifle," Hawk explained. "Chambered in .308, hand-loaded ammunition, carbon fiber stock. It's an extension of yourself, not just a tool." For the next 3 hours, under the light of a full moon that had emerged after the storm, the 5 veteran snipers tested Marcus relentlessly. They set up impossible shots, created artificial distractions, and challenged him with complex wind calculations. Marcus missed some targets, but hit far more than anyone expected. "He's got the fundamentals," Jackson admitted grudgingly, "and his wind reading is almost supernatural." "It's his breathing control that impresses me," another sniper added. "Perfect respiratory pause every time." Hawk, who had remained mostly silent throughout the evaluation, finally spoke. The kid's got talent, no question, but talent isn't enough in our line of work. He fixed Marcus with an intense stare. What drives you, Private? Why do you want this? Marcus hesitated, unsure how to answer. The truth was complicated, part desire to prove himself, part fascination with the technical challenge, part need for redemption after months of humiliation. I want to matter, he finally said. All my life, I've been invisible, insignificant, but when I'm behind the scope, everything else falls away. I'm not just present, I'm necessary. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm meant to do. The veterans exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Hawk nodded almost imperceptibly. Captain Winters tells us you've been hiding your abilities during regular training, Jackson said. Smart move, but it can't last forever. Eventually, you'll need to show what you can do. And when you do, Hawk added, everything will change. The military doesn't waste talent, especially not the kind you're showing. They'll fast-track you into specialized training, and your days of being the platoon joke will be over. Is that what happened to you? Marcus asked. A rare smile crossed Hawk's weathered face. Son, I wrote the book you've been studying. Sergeant William Hawkins, at your service. Marcus stared in disbelief. You're the author, but the book said you were. Dead? Yeah, that's the official story. Easier that way. Hawkins shrugged. The point is, I recognize the path you're on because I walked it myself. It's not an easy one. As the night wore on, the veterans shared stories and advice, offering insights no manual could provide. They spoke of the psychological toll of their profession, the isolation, the weight of responsibility. But they also described the profound satisfaction of mastering a discipline few could even comprehend. You'll never be celebrated, Hawkins told Marcus. Never be the hero in the stories. Most of your achievements will remain classified for decades. You have to be at peace with that. By the time they parted ways, dawn was approaching. Captain Winters pulled Marcus aside for a final word. Tomorrow, well, today now, there's a surprise evaluation. The general is visiting, and Sergeant Harmon has arranged a shooting competition. It's time to stop hiding, Reed. Show them what you can do. All of it, Marcus asked. Winters shook his head. Not all, just enough to open doors. The rest will come in time. As Marcus hiked back to camp, his mind raced with possibilities. For the first time since joining the military, he felt a sense of purpose, of belonging to something larger than himself. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The worst recruit in history was about to rewrite his own story. The hostage scenario was designed to be impossible. 1,200 yards, 30 mph crosswinds, and a target visible for only 3 seconds every 2 minutes. The general himself had come to witness the competition that would determine who would lead the new tactical response team. Marcus lay perfectly still on the ridge, his body temperature indistinguishable from the rocks around him after 14 hours in position. 14 hours, nearly a full day of absolute stillness, controlling every breath, every heartbeat, every blink. The other 5 finalists had been positioned along the same ridgeline, each assigned their own sector and target. 2 had already been eliminated, one for shifting position and revealing himself to the observers below, another for missing his brief window of opportunity when the target appeared. Marcus's ghillie suit, which he had meticulously customized over months, blended seamlessly with the rocky terrain. Bits of local vegetation, carefully selected and replaced daily to maintain color matching, broke up his human outline. Even the barrel of his rifle was wrapped in burlap strips that mimicked the surrounding scrub brush. Wind shifting 3 degrees east, came the barely audible whisper from his spotter. The same drill sergeant who had once made him eat his dinner off the floor now crouched nearby as his spotter, grudgingly muttering wind adjustments. Drill Sergeant Harmon had undergone his own transformation over the past year. His initial contempt for Marcus had evolved into reluctant respect, then genuine admiration, and finally, a gruff mentorship that complemented Captain Winters's more technical guidance. Where Winters taught precision, Harmon taught survival, the brutal, unforgiving aspects of fieldcraft that couldn't be learned from books. Target window in 30 seconds, Harmon murmured, his eye never leaving the spotter's scope. Humidity increasing. Adjust elevation 2 clicks. Marcus made the adjustment without acknowledging the instruction. After hundreds of hours working together, they had developed a shorthand that required minimal communication. The slightest movement of Marcus's finger on the elevation knob told Harmon the adjustment had been made. The scenario before them was the culmination of a year-long selection process for an elite counterterrorism unit. What had begun as a redemption story for Marcus, the transformation from laughingstock to respected marksman, had evolved into something far more significant. He was now competing for a position only a handful of snipers in the military's history had attained. The journey hadn't been smooth. After that pivotal night exercise in the thunderstorm, Marcus's hidden talents had become impossible to conceal. His performance in the surprise evaluation the following day, hitting targets at distances that challenged even veteran shooters, had catapulted him from obscurity into the spotlight. Jenkins, his former tormentor, had been the first to cry foul. "He's been sandbagging," Jenkins had accused, face flushed with anger, "pretending to be incompetent to make us underestimate him." Captain Winters had intervened smoothly. "Or perhaps, Jenkins, he's simply a late bloomer. Some talents reveal themselves under pressure." The general, impressed by Marcus's sudden emergence, had ordered his immediate transfer to advanced marksmanship training. The next 6 months had been a blur of specialized courses, each more demanding than the last. Urban sniper operations, Arctic environment shooting, desert long-range engagements, high-angle mountain operations. Through it all, Marcus had excelled, setting course records and earning the grudging respect of instructors who initially viewed him with skepticism. 10 seconds, Harmon whispered, interrupting Marcus's reflections. "Target will appear at the second-floor window, west side of the building." Marcus focused his attention on the abandoned apartment complex 1,200 yards away. The distance alone would challenge most marksmen, but the additional complications made this a nearly impossible shot. The 30 mph crosswinds meant the bullet would drift significantly during its flight. The brief exposure window, 3 seconds, left no room for hesitation, and the hostage element required pinpoint precision. 5 seconds. Marcus slowed his breathing, entering the state of hyper-awareness he had cultivated through countless hours of meditation and practice. Time seemed to stretch as his senses sharpened. He could feel each gust of wind against his skin, gauge its strength and direction with preternatural accuracy. 3, 2, 1. The target appeared, a silhouette visible through the second-floor window. Even through his high-powered scope, it was little more than a shadow at this distance. But Marcus could discern the critical details. The hostile holding a weapon to the head of a hostage. The shot would need to thread through a half-inch gap between them, hitting the hostile's exposed neck while avoiding the hostage entirely. In that moment, Marcus recalled Captain Winters's words from months earlier. "A sniper doesn't take a shot. He releases it, like breathing out after a long inhale." Marcus exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The rifle's report echoed across the valley. Through his scope, Marcus saw the target jerk backward before disappearing from view. Had he hit it? Had he missed? Had he accidentally hit the hostage? "Holy shit," Harmon breathed, staring through the spotter scope. Dead center, perfect shot. Below, observers with high-powered binoculars confirmed the hit. The general, watching through a live video feed, stood up from his chair, expression a mixture of disbelief and admiration. "Impossible," one of the other judges muttered. "That shot can't be made consistently. It has to be luck." "Then let him prove it wasn't," the general replied. "Reset the target, same parameters." Word reached Marcus through his radio. "Command requests confirmation of shot capability. Repeat exercise." Marcus exchanged a glance with Harmon, who shrugged. "They think it's a fluke. Show them it's not." When the target reappeared 2 minutes later, Marcus took the shot again. And again, the bullet found its mark with surgical precision. Again came the command. A third time, the target appeared. A third time, Marcus hit it perfectly. After the third consecutive success, the radio crackled with the general's voice. Enough. Position 1, identify yourself. Private First Class Marcus Reed, sir, Marcus responded, using his radio for the first time in 14 hours. A long pause followed. The same Reed who nearly washed out of basic training last year, the one they called Butterfingers. Yes, sir, the same. Another pause. Report to command post immediately. Exercise concluded. As Marcus and Harmon made their way down from the ridge, the other competitors watched with a mixture of respect and envy. Jenkins, who had also made it to the final round but had missed his shot, refused to meet Marcus's eyes. At the command post, the general was waiting with Captain Winters and several high-ranking officers Marcus didn't recognize. Their insignia and the absence of name tags suggested special operations. Reed, the general began without preamble, what you just demonstrated defies statistical probability. 3 consecutive shots at that distance, with those conditions, hitting a target zone smaller than a playing card. He leaned forward. I want to know how. Marcus hesitated, unsure how to explain the inexplicable. How could he describe the state of perfect alignment he entered when behind the scope, the way time slowed and distractions faded, the intuitive understanding of ballistics that transcended mathematical calculations? Permission to speak freely, sir, Captain Winters interjected. The general nodded. I've been observing Reed for the past year, Winters said. What you witnessed today isn't luck or even exceptional training, though he's had plenty of that. It's a rare convergence of physical and psychological attributes that create the perfect sniper. Explain, the general ordered. Reed possesses extraordinary visual acuity, 20/10 vision in both eyes. His resting heart rate is 42 beats per minute, allowing for extended periods between heartbeats when taking precision shots. His proprioception, awareness of body position, is off the charts. Winters paused. But his most valuable asset is psychological. Reed has what we call shooter's mind, the ability to enter a flow state where conscious thought gives way to pure instinct. The general turned back to Marcus. Is that how you describe it, Reed? Marcus considered the question carefully. Not exactly, sir. For me, it's about disappearing. Disappearing. When I'm in position, looking through the scope, I cease to exist as a separate entity. There's no me, no rifle, no target, just the shot itself, waiting to happen. Marcus struggled to articulate the ineffable experience. The calculations, wind, distance, humidity, they happen without conscious thought, like breathing. One of the special operations officers leaned forward. You're describing what Eastern philosophies call mushin, no mind, the state where action occurs without the interference of thought. I suppose so, sir, Marcus replied. I just know that when everything aligns, the shot feels inevitable, like it's already happened and I'm just allowing it to manifest. The general exchanged glances with the other officers, a silent communication passing between them. Reed, what I'm about to tell you is classified. The competition you just won wasn't just for a position in a tactical response team. It was a selection process for a new unit, one that doesn't officially exist. He slid a folder across the table. Inside is an offer. Take 24 hours to consider it. If you accept, you'll disappear from official records. Your friends, family, anyone who knows you, will be told you've been assigned to routine deployment overseas. In reality, you'll be undergoing the most intensive specialized training the military has to offer. Muckas opened the folder, scanning the documents inside. The unit's designation was a simple alphanumeric code, its mission described in carefully vague terms. But the implications were clear. This was a black operations unit, designed for missions that could never be acknowledged. Why me? Muckas asked, looking up. A year ago, I was the worst recruit in camp history. Now you're offering me a position in what appears to be one of the most elite units in existence. What changed? The general smiled slightly. You did read, and perhaps our understanding of what makes an exceptional operator. Traditional metrics, physical strength, aggression, dominance, have their place. But for certain specialized roles, we need different qualities. Patience, precision. The ability to remain invisible not just physically, but psychologically. He gestured to drill Sergeant Harmon. Your sergeant here recommended you for this program 6 months ago, despite your inauspicious beginning. He recognized something in you that our standard evaluation processes missed. Muckas turned to Harmon in surprise. The sergeant's perpetually stern expression softened slightly. Don't look so shocked, Reed, Harmon said gruffly. You think I made you clean latrines with a toothbrush for fun? I was testing your resilience, your attention to detail, your ability to perform mundane tasks with excellence. Essential qualities for the role we had in mind. And Captain Winters, Muckas asked. Was already part of the program, the general answered. His retirement from active duty was a cover. He's been identifying and developing potential candidates for years. Winters nodded. That book you found wasn't an accident, Muckas. We placed them strategically, waiting for the right person to discover them. Most recruits would have ignored it or turned it in. You studied it, applied it, improved upon it. The revelation stunned Muckas. His entire journey, from humiliated recruit to elite marksman, had been, if not orchestrated, then at least observed and guided from the shadows. So what happens now? He asked. Now you decide, the general replied. The path ahead is difficult. The training will break you down and rebuild you. The missions will test not just your skills but your moral compass, and you will never receive public recognition for your achievements. He leaned forward. But you will save lives. You will prevent conflicts before they begin. You will be the invisible guardian that allows others to sleep peacefully, never knowing the threats they were spared. As Muckas stood to receive his elite sniper tab, the general asked how he'd managed such transformation. Muckas smiled slightly, thinking of the countless nights of secret practice, the bleeding fingers, the meditation techniques, and the day he'd finally understood that his initial weakness, his hypersensitivity that made him flinch at loud noises, had become his greatest strength, allowing him to perceive minute environmental changes others missed. I just needed something worth fighting for, sir, he answered, touching the photo of his murdered sister he kept in his breast pocket, the real reason he'd enlisted in the first place. The truth was more complex than he could express. His sister's murder had indeed been the catalyst for his enlistment, but his transformation had been fueled by something deeper, the discovery of his true calling. Behind the scope, he had found not just purpose but identity. The worst recruit in history had become not just a skilled marksman but a perfect instrument of precision, invisible, patient, and absolutely certain when the moment came to act. As he signed the acceptance documents, Muckas reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. From the humiliated recruit scrubbing toilets with a toothbrush to an elite operator about to vanish into the shadows of national security. The transformation was complete, but in many ways it had simply revealed what was always there. Beneath the trembling hands and awkward demeanor, the soul of a guardian who found peace in perfect stillness and purpose in protecting others from threats they would never see coming. Welcome to the program, Specialist Reed, the general said, extending his hand. Or should I say, Ghost One?